Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this concluding Pearson and I training webinar for teachers. My name's Michael Brand. I'm just going to be going through a few housekeeping details before I pass over to Emma San José, who's going to be talking to you about CLIL and cooperation between English teachers and subject teachers. Okay. Just perhaps you could put in there's a questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. You could just put in there, say hello, and let me know that you can hear me and that you can see me. So so we know all of the tech is running as it should. Let's have a look. So you've got a little, like I say, a questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. Just press on the button and write something in there. Okay, so good. Hello. Yeah, we've got a few highs coming in now. Okay, great. So you're receiving me. The questions box then is where, of course, you can ask questions. I will be monitoring that questions box. I'll be noting down the questions, and we can put them to Emma at the end of the presentation. Okay. I'm just going to. Some of you often ask, or some people ask about certificates. Certificates will be sent out to you next week. And some people also ask about if you can re-watch the recording of the webinar. Okay, and you can. So probably the week after next, the webinars will be uploaded to the Teacher Training Hub. And I'm just going to put that address in the chat box. This is a place where you can see what events teacher trainers in Spain, Pearson teacher trainers in Spain are doing. We've got a blog there as well. You can see the webinars that are coming up, and you can also go to the Pearson Academy, which is a library of all online training sessions we've done, the recordings plus the PDFs. Okay, so you can go there if you'd like to watch the recording again. Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Emma San José. As I say, she's going to be talking about CLIL today and how English teachers and subject teachers can work together. And she's very well placed to talk about this, in fact, because she's worked as an English teacher and a subject teacher, and she's actually developing CLIL materials. Okay, so she's something of an authority on the subject. So I'm going to, without further ado, pass over to Emma and let her get started with the presentation. Okay, so all yours, Emma.
Hello, can you hear me now? Okay, right, so hello everybody. As Michael just said, I'm going to be going through some of this wonderful content I've got prepared for you today. But first of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself so you know who I am and what I am doing here, okay? So I'm going to start with where I come from, right? And although I'm Spanish, I lived for quite a while in Ireland. I did some studying there. I worked in summer camps. I worked in academies. I've been a teacher of Spanish in Ireland and a teacher of English in Spain. Okay, and after a long time teaching English, I decided to do a bit more, which was study something else, and that was geography and history, because I really like the content of those texts and the English books, you know, where they tell you about all these really interesting facts. So anyway, I studied geography and history to be a teacher as well. And when I was asked to teach social science and English, I decided to train a little bit into the methodology that I thought was the most suitable for this kind of teaching, which is CLIL, right? You know that it's very easy to do courses, and then when you go to class, you're not really sure if it's going to work. But surprisingly enough, it actually works, and it makes my life a lot easier to use these techniques. Then I continued with another master's in bilingualism, because it's fascinating to see how language and society are so much related, how language shapes society, how the use of bilingualism in certain areas is, well, it's all fascinating and very interesting. And all those things together have made me what I am now, which is a teacher of English and a teacher of social science and a teacher of both. Then I do some teacher training as well. This is my actually second webinar ever. First one was an hour ago, and kind of enjoying it really. Then, as Michael said, I've also started to develop content, like CLIL materials, not only for myself, but to share with others. And I do some examining as well, like basically for a certificate. And I would like to end up in the future in a house with loads of books and walking my dogs and relaxing a little bit, because this life that I'm having right now is very hectic, although I absolutely love it. Okay, so we're going to start with some basic concepts on CLIL, and also the challenges that teaching a subject in another language brings. We're going to start with something very simple, but sometimes something that we forget very easily, which is what CLIL stands for. And it is the acronym for Content and Language Integrated Learning. Right, it means that when we are in a CLIL classroom, we have to deal with two things at the same time. Okay? Making sure that students acquire the knowledge and the content from the subject that we're doing, say geography, say physical education, say art, whatever it is, but we have to deal with that as a teacher of that subject. And at the same time, we have to deal with language issues, because we're doing it in a language that is not the teacher's native language. And that involves a lot of things. And the first thing it involves is that students are going to struggle with not only one, but two things at a time. Why? Because we normally have students that are in class and they listen to you and they understand everything. But we also have students who don't understand everything. So they're going to have to deal with some issues connected to the way they learn, and we have to help them get there. But at the same time, we have the same thing when we talk about language. We're going to have students with different levels in the language, with different linguistic abilities, and we're going to have both. So not only one thing, but the other. So it's a full class of challenges for us as a teacher. We're going to have students that we have to help in both things, acquiring knowledge and acquiring language. Okay. Now, when that happens, things get a little bit funny for us, because we realize that we have prepared this wonderful class and the lesson is going fantastically well, but we start seeing faces and we think, okay, right, that one's not following me, that one's not following me, that wasn't following me. And what's the natural thing to do? Slow down and make the content or the language or both easier, and reduce the level. Now, if we reduce the level, we're being unfair, because let's think of it this way. We've got students who are in a classroom where they're supposed to be learning things in another language, but what they're learning has to be the same as what the students in their other classes, like in their mother tongues, are learning. We should not change the content, and we should not make it easier, because we'd be cheating on them. Like, that's not what they have been signed in for. And also, it's unfair because like for the other students, because why should these ones have it easier than the other ones? Okay, so if we don't want to be unfair, we have to keep the level and just work with the language and work with the different tools that we're going to have in our hands to help students understand and follow our lessons. We can translate, but if we want to use our native languages there, if we want to use the students' mother tongues, which we can do, we have to make sure that we do it in a way that is not making them disengage from the English part. I'm going to explain that. Imagine that I'm explaining something and I see the students don't follow. So I stop and I translate that, and then I continue in English, and then I translate it again. What is a student going to do? Option one, they're going to use the opportunity to use the translation skills they've got to see what they've been saying and how they've been saying it. But the most normal thing is that they say, well, why am I going to bother? Why am I going to make it an effort if in a couple of minutes we're going to have the same thing explained in Spanish? So careful with translations and careful with simplifying language in that way. Okay, it's better to give them activities like, I don't know, text with a mix, a combination of both languages, activities to work on the equivalence of one concept in a language and the same concept in a different language, but be careful with translating. Right. That was about CLIL, but what about language lessons? Like if we are an English teacher, we know that in a normal school, English is a subject just like any other. And when they leave the classroom, they're not going to be using English at all in the whole school. They're not going to be talking to their friends in English. They're not going to be watching the films in English, unfortunately. But that subject is going to be an island just like any other subject, okay? Because outside school, it's going to disappear. Because we as teachers know that a language is not a normal subject, we also know that it requires a context. And a language without a context is something that students are not going to engage into. So we have to try and use strategies to detach from the typical sentence transformation exercises, gut feeling, vocabulary lists, learning a list of verbs with the past, because that's going to make students skilled in exercise making and exercise practice, but that is not going to give them the tools they need to understand the language, to speak the language. Quite often when we talk about CLIL, we say that we don't want them to be accurate. What we want is them to use the language in an effective way, okay? If we can help them acquire that accuracy, then fantastic, but it's not the objective, okay? As a language teacher, your task is to help them develop those skills to speak good language, to use good language, to use good structures. But again, it's always better to let them gain fluency and become confident, because then we can always polish those things that didn't work out properly the first time. Anyway, coming back to what we were saying, if we turn the English classroom into a mathematics class, saying, okay, you change that for that, you move it around, you put a verb here and there, then students are going to lack motivation, and that's going to be you at the end of the day, right? Because you have planned this lesson, and as you're working there, you see that students get bored, you are absolutely bored as well, and you start even losing the will to live at some point, okay? So the point here is collaboration, okay? Collaboration is the key, but it's not only the key, it's also a higher goal, okay? Because if we collaborate, we're going to get much more than what we would get if we were working isolated. Like if the CLIL teacher works alone, it's going to get here. If the English teacher works alone, it's going to get here. When they work together, we're going to be able to build up and I don't know, guide the students quite far from the initial objective, and probably be much more successful. Okay, things we can talk about here. Things that we can do together is prepare an accurate set of teaching and learning objectives. I will never say this enough times, but objectives are the most important things that you have to analyze and design when you're planning your course or your lesson. Okay, you have to see what are the content-specific aims, what are the objectives that you want to deal with from a content point of view. And from a linguistic point of view, what do you need? What students need to follow you, to deliver the content, and, well, to be successful in the end? Okay? So you need to cooperate. Both of you have to cooperate. And I know that now you're saying, but how do this? I have no time. We don't have any allocated time for doing this in school. We don't have any materials. We don't have time to make materials. So, okay, here is where we come from. Strategies. How can we do this so that it's not a moment of panic? And we see how things can work out very nice and easily if we, join together and join forces. Right. So first of all, when we're starting a new module, when we're starting a new unit, call it whatever you want, the first thing that we have is the subject teacher looking at it and say, okay, what is the content that we're going to be dealing with in this unit? Okay, what is the knowledge that we have to work with? Then the English teacher will have a look and say, right, this is what you're doing, fine. What language do we need here? Do we need the structures? We need those structures, not only vocabulary, but grammar, okay? Then once they have sat down together and they're talking about this, they also need to have a look at the group of students they're going to be dealing with. Because you know that every group is different. Every student's different, so when they group, they're even more different. And you have to analyze from different points of view, like if it's a group of people where they're very competitive, or maybe that we've got a lot of them that don't really like to work and we have to use some kind of motivation skills there to help them join. Or maybe it's a group that is fantastic and works very well, but linguistically, they're below what's the desired level. So anyway, we need to analyze all those things so that the planning of the module makes more sense. Now, how do we do these things? First of all, you need to analyze what kind of teacher you are. And if you're a subject teacher, you will know that you have two possible paths to follow. Okay, one, which is you work with CLIL, you make your own module, you make your own materials. Some schools do that, and you have like your little modules there that you can use, you can share, you can adapt, and you can work with every year. Or you can use a textbook, which is very useful in the sense that you have the content there already prepared with text that you can use, and you need simply to adjust and add some extra activities, some, I don't know, comprehension games, whatever, but let's say that the main content is there for you, right? The moment comes to start preparing your class, and that's when you start to think, okay, now what do I need? This is the content, but then the language, what language do I need here, there? And once that moment arrives, you don't really know where to start, but I promise, like after 3-4 times that you do it and you test it, it's kind of easy and it rolls together, okay? So don't worry about that. Okay. Planning the objectives is, as I said before, one of the most important things and will make your lives very, very easy if you do it properly. Okay. The best way to do it is to change the questions that we normally ask ourselves. If instead of asking, what are we going to teach, we ask, what do we want students to learn? That simple change of focus is going to really help us identify the needs of the students regarding content. What will students know at the end of the module will also give us another interesting point of view to, okay, this is what I want them to learn, and this is what they will know, okay, which is not exactly the same. And the key question, what do they need to get there? And this is where you come in, okay? This is what we want them to learn. This is what they will know, but this is me helping them get there. Okay, so what do they need? We have to analyze that, and we have to prepare material, prepare content, and prepare activities to make them get there. Okay, to do this, I'm going to go very quickly through the module that a CLIL unit would have, the sections that a CLIL module would have. If you're familiar with CLIL, you know this, but just for those of you who are not, I'll just very quickly outline some things. So a CLIL module covers let's say like a content unit, and is divided into 4 different sections. We've got introduction, investigation, consolidation, and creation. Now, be very careful with the names because they are not exactly what they seem to be. Okay, I'm just going to go over them quickly, and you're going to understand, I hope, quite easily what I mean. So, the introduction is the short part of the module, and in this first part, what you have is to identify what students know, where they are, so you can build up from there. So imagine that you're talking about the Romans, and you start talking to the students and you realize that they have never seen the Romans before. Like in primary, their teacher that year skipped the whole unit because of whatever reasons, and all they know comes from films and maybe some, I don't know, Lego competition they've been to. I don't know. So you have to start with a lot of background and produce a more detailed material for them. Or the other way around, you come to a group and they say that they haven't only made a lot of work on the Romans because their teacher loved the Romans, but that they are really familiar because some of them are in a Roman culture group, and every afternoon they go and they do theater plays and they read. Okay? You never know what you're going to have in class. So if you don't know that and you produce the same module all the time, then you're going to miss out on things. So the first thing you have to do is get there and see what they know. But not only what they know, but how they know it, because maybe they have a lot of this. Maybe they know a lot of things, but they know all of those things from Hollywood films. We all know that although very entertaining, they might not always be accurate. Okay, so imagine that they tell you that they know all the knowledge of the Greek culture comes from that film was it 300. And you think, well, fine, yeah, but maybe it wasn't exactly like that, or Troya with Brad Pitt. So you need to activate what they know. You need to know if what they know it correctly, and also see if they have the language to explain and to express what they know. Because maybe they know a lot about Greek colonies, but they don't know how to say colony, or they don't know how to say, I don't know, expansion or trade. So we have to identify if they're familiar with that vocabulary or not. Activating knowledge, making sure that, or at least finding out if they know it correctly, having a look at the vocabulary and identifying what vocabulary they've got and what language skills they need. And then we're going to identify with the language teacher that we've seen before, what language is going to be important for them, what language skills they're going to need to follow the module correctly and to be able to participate and express themselves. Then we can, this introduction is also important because it tells them what's coming next. Okay, you introduce the unit, you introduce the topic, and you say, okay, we're going to learn about this, we're going to learn about that. So they have a clear idea of where they're going to. Okay, you give them like their learning path. The second part is the investigation. And again, careful, they're not going to do any research here as such. This is the module in which content is presented and developed. This is where they're going to acquire the knowledge, where they're going to discover things. That's why it's called investigation. Here we're going to give them all the information that they need for whatever it is that we're talking about in this module. Okay, so again, if we're talking about migration, everything that we need to talk about is going to be presented in this part. Because we're giving lots of things to them in this first part, they're going to understand and remember mostly. Okay, so if you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, you're going to know what I'm talking about. We're going to talk about scaffolding. So we start at the base of the pyramid, and we start with very simple, from a cognitive point of view, activities, okay? They simply have to read, understand, remember, and little by little, we're going to climb up that pyramid, and we're going to start asking them to apply that knowledge and to connect with other things. Okay, little by little, we're going to make it more difficult from a cognitive point of view. So what are we going to do here? We're going to present the content in different ways. Okay? Because as we said before, not all students are the same, and they don't have all of them the same skills, whether we're talking about language or we're talking about cognition. Okay, but they're going to be different. So if we prepare material that is only text, we'll have just a group of students there who follow and who are happy with things. But if we present things like in a video or with listening, or we have different ways of presenting it, and students will have different ways of acquiring that and understanding. Okay, we'll see how visual input is essential in this section. The next part is consolidation. Okay, and here we're not going to introduce new content. We're just going to make sure everything that we've given them is clear. Just like consolidation is exactly that. We're going to revise, we're going to differentiate. Like some people might need a bit longer to understand certain things. Some others have understood everything from the beginning, so we're going to be able to give them something else. As I told you at the beginning, I'm a classroom teacher as well, right? I teach social science in the 4 courses in secondary. So I know what something that sounds fantastic and is for many reasons something great, which is diversity in the classroom, then as a teacher is a nightmare, because you really have to make sure that everybody's catered for. And we may not have the time or the materials to do that, but with CLIL, you can simply elaborate the same material and make it a bit harder or a bit easier, like provide more support to do the activities. And that helps here, because then every student is going to be working at their own pace, and you are going to be able to detect if they have understood or they haven't understood, and everything is like kind of settling down, all the knowledge, right? And then the final section, which is creation, doesn't mean that they have to make a castle, okay? That they have to make a PowerPoint. This can be a simple test. The idea is that they have to show you and the world that the content that they have acquired can come out again in a different shape, like not exactly the same way that you have told them. To get here, they need to process all that content. They need to have understood it. They need to remember everything. So in the Bloom taxonomy pyramid is at the very top. It's the most complex skill, let's say. But still, the work that we're going to be talking about is more connected to the investigation part than with this one. Okay, so how can we work together? How can we deliver material that is suitable and useful, right? I'm going to use some example here. I'm a social science teacher, so I do geography and history. And I've chosen geography because I think like it's like everybody knows a bit more about history, and I'm sure everybody has studied the Earth at some point. So you're going to understand quite easily what we're going to talk about. So the content here is the Earth. I'm going to use a textbook, and we're going to see from a point of view of the subject teacher, that is a geography teacher, and from the point of view of the English teacher, the same text and how we can work together. Okay, so this is the text. The basic components of the physical environment, in particular, the layers of the Earth. If we look at the text, we can see many things. We can see, first of all, that it talks about the structure of the Earth, talks about the lithosphere and the characteristics. Then we have here different names for layers, that they're concentric. Okay, we have information. I am a geography teacher. What do I want? Okay, I want students to understand this. I want them to understand that the Earth has layers, that they're concentric. I want them to know the names of the different layers. I want them to know what the characteristics of each layer is. I want them to know that outside the planet we also have other layers. I want them to know where the animals and living beings live. I want them to know what are the characteristics of the lithosphere. Okay, this is the content. This is what I want them to understand and what I want them to know. So what do I need to do? I've got the text, I've got the content here, fine. Option 1, I give this to them. And they study it, I ask them, they repeat it. Have they learned? I don't know. Why? Because they're going to tell me exactly the same thing that I've got in the text. So how do I know if they have learned it? We're not creating, that's what I meant before. We're not using that knowledge to present it in a different way to show the world that it's clear. Okay, so how can we make sure that they understand apart from learn? Right, we're going to start with the first thing. We've got a text, and sometimes we're going to find students that don't understand everything. How can we help them comprehend that text? Here we have things like this: highlighting, underlining, subdividing the text. Right, let's go back to the text. We already have that here, don't we? We've got headings, paragraph divisions, we've got blocks of content, we've got bold print, we've got visuals here. Why? Because this is a textbook. And when we design textbooks, we already do these things. So when are we going to use this? If we create our own text. Let's say that, for example, we find a text in another book that we like, and we copy it and we put it up in, I don't know if you use Classroom, but it's a great thing to use, Google Classroom. Put it up there so that you can have a look at it. Or we watch this documentary and we like it, and so we kind of type our own text with the ideas that we have heard there, right? So if we do that, we have to make sure that we use these techniques, okay? That we highlight parts, that we make sure that we have the blocks of content with the title. So the student looks at this and knows exactly where the information is. Okay? And if I don't understand everything, which can be the case, I look at this and I say, concentric layers, core, mantle, crust, hydrosphere, right? I have the keywords outlined for me. So I'm going to have it more, let's say, a little bit easier if I want to say what are the layers of the earth, and I look at this, okay, these layers are, and then we have the names, and I don't have to understand everything, I just have to look for that information. Okay, more things that we can do to help understand that text. It's using visual support graphs. Now, if I say visual support graphs, what's the thing that comes to your mind first of all? I wish I could hear you, but I can't. So I'm going to guess what your answer is going to be. And how about mind maps? Okay. Now, if we wanted to make a mind map out of this, we have different ways of doing this. Number one, we tell the students to do it. Make a mind map. Okay. 12-year-olds, do you think they can? Do you think they are able to have a very clear and organized mind map with the right categories and the right levels in each category? Only if they have done it before and somebody has taught them how to do it. Okay, if you ask them to make a mind map out of this for the first time, they're going to find it very difficult. So as with everything, we have to scaffold it. We have to give them something that they can use to then build up and do it on their own. In this case, you can do different things, okay? The traditional way, blackboard or whiteboard, and you draw the mind map there with them. And they say, now we have to do this. Now the layers, some of the layers, and they look for the information in the text, do that, and then you ask them to copy it in their notebooks, for example. Okay, another possibility, you give them the outline, and they have to simply complete it. Another possibility, they use post-its, which is something like you give them everything and they have to organize the post-its in the right categories. Or you can use the digital world for this. There are very interesting websites or apps that are free. Okay, I've chosen this one, okay, because it's free and it's very simple to use. And you can do it with them. If they've got I don't know, Chromebooks or tablets in class, they can make it in their devices as well, and they can keep it. Okay, so whichever way you prefer, but they organize the information in a mind map, which then can be used for many things. Okay, What can we use a mind map for? Revising? Yes. For having the information organized? Yes. But how about you give it to them, let's say in the consolidation section of the module, like a bit later, and say, okay, this is the mind map. Okay, can you explain to me the structure of the Earth? And you let them use the mind map. So they have all the information there, and now they just have to use their different skills to present that information in a different way, because they have it there. Okay. Visual support. Other ways we can use visual support with something like that. Here we have a graph. Okay, in this case, it's talking about tectonic plates. We want them to use a graph to explain or to understand the different layers. Okay, we can ask them to make their own graph. Now, I don't know how artistic you are, but my students normally laugh at me when I try to make any kind of attempt to draw a graph. But it's great because I tell them, listen, I'm not an artist and my graphs are a disaster, but they do the job, right? So that's what I want. I want you to do something that shows you this information in a visual way. You have to be confident to do it properly, and you can also scaffold it. Okay, so what can we do? We can give them the graph ourselves. And you may think, yeah, okay, fine, but then what do we do with this? You can take this out and write them here. So they simply have to put them in the right place using the text as a guideline. You can take this out and not give them anything. So they'll have to look for that information in the text and write it here. Or you can make it even more challenging. You can do that. So they actually have to outline the drawing and include the content, like the words in the right place. They have to be more accurate when they do that. Okay. Do we have to choose? Well, you can do one, the other, or all of them, and you can give each different type of activity to different students. Now, sometimes people are quite concerned about differentiation because they think, oh yeah, but then students are going to say, why do you have that one and why do you have that one? If we want diversity in the classroom, we have to make things normal, and everybody has to assume, just like I cannot run a marathon because my physical skills are not the appropriate ones for running a marathon. Maybe some other people also need different paces to do things, right? And if we accept and assume that is absolutely normal, and students are facing that every day in a normal, natural way, nobody's going to say anything, but it's something that has to be dealt with in, at school as well. Anyway, I'm drifting away. We have this, we have other possibilities, and we also have the traditional, get the text and make a drawing out of it, make a diagram with the information that you have here. Okay, right. More things. I'm still a geography teacher, okay? Still not the language teacher. So keywords that are going to be keywords for understanding. So which words are we going to be needing here? I'm sorry, we're going to be needing the names of the layers, definitely. We're going to be needing things like fragmentation. We're going to need things like thickness. But as a language teacher, I'll deal with those things later. Now I'm the content, so I just want the names of the layers. I want the characteristics, right? So, have you ever heard of Quizlet? Because if you haven't, it's the moment, okay? This is the best, for me, the best tool that teachers have at the moment. It's free and it's really easy to use, okay? Quizlet is great because it allows you to choose a set of words, choose a set of key vocabulary, and practice it, learn it, work on the definitions, give visual support, but then they can do loads of games and activities like matching, filling gaps, choosing the right definition. Okay. I'm going to do something. Okay. I'm going to get out from here for a second and go here. Okay. Sorry. There. So this is Quizlet when you enter here. And you have the option of looking for somebody's material. Somebody has done this before you. So we go to structure of the earth. Look for it. And look, yeah, oh, we're right, we're lucky. We have a lot of units that people have done before. Look, 36 terms, 16 terms, 40, 11, 13. So obviously everybody has done this in a way that suits them. Okay? Let's go here, for example, let's choose this one. And here we've got structure of the earth. What is this? Here we have the lithosphere. Let's have a look at the definition. It's a part of the earth which is composed mostly of rocks. Okay? It's called the crust. The mantle, what's the mantle? A layer of solid rock between the earth's crust and the core, right? And we love it because it's, you know, it's like typical flashcards where you have the term and the definition, but also this typical flashcard, we've got the term, definition, and the picture. Right. We have here practice. So they give us a definition. The inner core is solid iron and nickel, and the outer core is liquid iron and nickel. Sorry. And we decide. Okay. Oh no, sorry, that was wrong. Okay. So it's good practice. It helps us also. You can play here, and you can decide here. What is this? Is this the inner core? Let's have a look. No, it's not. Okay. Students love it. Okay. But now imagine that you want to use specific words in particular. So here, okay, I was using this before. So you do that. You describe there whatever it is that you're doing, and you choose the words and the terms that you want to include in your unit. So we said we're going to talk about crust. Okay, you choose it. And here we have definitions that other people have used before us, or we can make our own definition because we have, I don't know, developed the definitions with them because it's the definitions that we've got in the book, or because we like our definition best. Okay, in this case, I'm going to use which one? The layer of rock that forms the Earth's outer surface, for example, right? And I can even choose an image to add here. So we're talking about the crust, which one would be more suitable? For example, I can talk about that one, or I can upload my own image that I've chosen before and I prefer. Anyway, so we create our own unit and we share with the students. They practice the word, they love it, they play the game, and they really, really acquire that key vocabulary in a very easy way. Now, why is this better than vocabulary lists? Okay. Because they love it. They play, it's very visual, and you know, the way they, you avoid learning by heart the translations, okay? Or learning by heart the definitions. Here you kind of acquire them in a different way. Okay. Right, another way, and now we're getting closer to the language teacher business. Another way we can do this is we've got keywords, and in this case, we're going to make a word cloud. I don't know if you're familiar with this word clouds. Language teachers probably are. You've got a text, and what you do is you, in this case, I've used Word It Out, but again, there are many others. You type your text here, or you copy and paste. It's exactly the same thing, and you generate the word cloud. These are the most used words in that text. And you ask the students to rewrite the content using those words, okay, which are used as a, let's say, comfort net, safety net in a way. And it's going to be more challenging for them, because one thing is to choose a definition or to simply click on the right definition, but now they actually have to write their own answers. Okay. Language teachers now can work together with the content teacher because they can decide, okay, I'm going to analyze the way you write as well. So apart from using the right structures, you're going to be using the content from that. So there is a context for whatever we're working with. Right. Let's move on a little bit because time is running. The CLIL teacher, in this case, the geography teacher, gets to plan the module. decides on the materials, the texts that are going to appear in the unit, the activities that are going to appear, and then meets with the language teacher, and they go through the activities together. Okay? The language teacher looks at the unit, decides what language skills and what grammar aspects are going to be necessary to, for students to understand and to follow, and they kind of outline those skills, those requirements. Then, and this is important, they have to look at the objectives for the course. That is, what are we supposed to be doing in English in this year? Okay, and they look at the contents and they kind of match, and they say, okay, let's make sure that they practice this aspect as well. Or in this unit, we have to practice this and that, and this one in particular is part of our program, so we're going to make more of an effort in that one. And they check the material and adapt the timeline. Okay, this is another example. This actually comes from that text was the old ANAIA textbook. This is the new ANAIA textbook, where we're developing part of linguistic approach to help the language teachers connect with the content of the subjects. Okay, so we've got a text here with some reading and writing questions, reading and listening questions, some speaking activities, and a writing activity that can be done together with either the language assistant or the English classroom. Okay, this is the text. Activity 5 says that the Earth is in constant change, blah, blah, a bit more of explanation there. And the activity is, think of a place that you know and has changed, do research and write a description about how it has changed and the factors that caused it. Now, if you're a language teacher, if you're an English teacher, you're going to very easily understand what grammar points are going to be necessary for students. Okay? If you have to write a description, you're going to need adjectives, but from a linguistic point of view, you're also going to need something else, which is verb tenses, right? How it has changed. So you'll have to talk about how it used to be and what is it now and the factors that caused it. So we're going to use to, past simple, maybe present perfect, maybe present simple. So we're going to be doing their work with the verb tenses. And at the same time, they'll have to use the knowledge from this unit, okay? If we're going to write about a place that has changed and the factors that caused it, we're going to be talking about relief and the factors that cause relief. And geography teachers, we know that that's erosion, for example, okay? So there we start seeing how these two things can connect. And the result of this writing can be something that the language teachers can take into account for their marks, for their assessment, for their lessons, and the content teachers are going to analyze what is the content there, okay? The next activity is something different. Imagine that you belong to an environmental conservation group and you want to raise awareness on the impact of human action on the landscape. Okay? You have to prepare your speech for a presentation to explain the situation and suggest measures to minimize the damage. Okay, here it's more of an oral activity. You have to prepare a speech. So you're going to use language of persuasion. You're going to use, and now we'll go to the content of the First Professor Real English book. And we see that, oh, look, here we've got something that we can use. Modal verbs for advice, should and shouldn't. Okay, so how about we use this activity that we have seen in the geography lesson for practicing the should and shouldn't. Okay, so you should recycle more. People shouldn't throw plastics or right? So incorporate the reason to learn should and shouldn't in the English lesson. Help students join their ideas, link and connect by giving them the language resources that they're going to be needing. Okay, right. Some things that normally appear in the English lesson, and at least from my personal experience, are like passives again, right? And you're like, yeah, passives, you know, they're really important. You're going to be using passives a lot. And they go like, yeah, okay, you know, change this, you put the verb to be, then and they know how to do it because it's mechanical for them. Okay, relatives. Now, relatives are essential. Passives are essential. These two things are really important because academic writing and scientific texts are going to be full of passive sentences because they're impersonal, and they're going to be full of relatives because it's definitions. Okay, so how come in an English lesson these things are like passives again, and in the real world they're so important and so necessary? Let's join them. Okay, let's put them together and let's see how they can find a context, understand why passives exist, are useful. And it's not about changing the order of the verb and the object, and it's about understanding that they're used for a reason. Okay, here we go. Textbook, relatives. Here we have the definition of defining relative clauses. Okay, this is it. We use the which, we use the where, you know, exactly. Then sometimes we use that or who, be careful. We've got exercises with relative pronouns. We've got what non-defining are. Okay, but do we have anything here that connects with the definitions that we have seen in the text book? Same thing with the passive voice. We've got the passive, how we make the passive, okay? To be, participle. Now, content teachers, you shouldn't know this, but it's good that you see that this is done because you're going to be using this in your lessons, okay? But if you look at it, we don't really see why it's so important to learn passives and to know how to use passives and to understand passives. So if we come back to the text here, the one is the same one as we've seen before from the point of view of the geography teacher. And I ask you to do this. Imagine you're the students and I come to class with the same text, or I say, listen, today we're going to do an activity. Can you please take out your geography books and go to page whatever? And now you're going to do these activities. Okay? You're going to underline the sentences that use a relative. And my question for you is, if the relative clause didn't exist, would the sentence be complete? Would it be useful? Let's have a look. Here, for example, the core, which is made of very dense materials and particularly of iron. Okay, so here we have the relative sentence. Let's leave it out. Now, is the sentence complete? We just have the core. So we need the relative. Why do we need it? Because it's giving us information that's essential to understand what the core is. There you go. You have the real explanation of why we need to learn how to make definitions with relative clauses. Same thing with passives. Highlight the passive forms in the text. Can they be active? Who or what performs the action? Okay, whatever, anywhere. The lithosphere is made up of the crust and the upper part of the mantle. Okay, the question was, could we make this active? Okay, do we have a by somewhere? No, then we'll use people or somebody. Can we do that? No. So what happens? That not all the passives can be transformed from an active. Sometimes we use them when what happens is the action is the important thing. There's no real somebody doing anything. You know what I mean? What I'm doing here is I'm giving them the explanation of why passives exist and an example of a text in which we have millions of passives, and they're going to realize how passives are necessary for scientific explanations. Okay, again, we're linking the two things, and we're giving the context for a passive structure, which is passives, and we're giving the content teacher, the geography teacher, the necessary structure for defining or for explaining things from a scientific type of language. Okay. Here, for example, we've got another table of contents. In this case, is the third FSO English book. And we have here comparatives, we've got second conditionals, we've got passives. Okay, so these things are going to appear and we're going to be using them a lot in the geography, art, social science, natural science, physical education, whatever it is the subject that you're doing. But we're going to be using these structures. We're going to be needing this vocabulary, sorry, this linguistic resources, and it's only the language teachers that have the skill, the ability, the training, or whatever you want to call it, to help students go there, because it's not the geography teacher's job to teach language, but accompany the students in their language acquisition process. Okay, More things here. Defining concepts, okay? In the geography lesson, we're going to be needing this, how to write definitions, okay? Lithosphere, what is a lithosphere? What is orogenesis? What is, okay? So help them, okay? Help them do this. This material I've used is from normal books, okay? From Real World Advanced by Pearson, and loads of reading material stuff. And I've used the geography from this, it's an old edition from the Geography and History textbook, but I've also used the new ones that we're doing. So I'm taking examples from these books, but I could be using any other book, because this is what we have to be doing. Get the material that we have, analyze it, and make the most of it. And with this, we have come to the end of the presentation. So it'll be great now if you have anything to ask, Michael, I'll be great.
Yeah, thanks very much, Emma. That was very useful. I'm sure we can all agree. We've had a few thank yous coming through the questions box, teachers thanking you for the presentation. But Emma's a mine of information on CLIL and strategies for English and content teachers. So if you do have any questions to put to her, we've still got just a couple of minutes left for her to answer those. It's only thank yous at the moment, Emma, but we'll give everybody just a few seconds of grace in case they want to get anything in the chat box, in the questions box, I should say.
There was a lot of things that we talked about, so maybe it's to go through everything and produce a question right now might be complicated. Maybe you'll have the questions in the next half an hour, but still.
Yeah, maybe it's getting late for a few teachers. My where I'm presenting from, actually, the automatic lights have actually gone off in the last couple of minutes, so I'm shrouded in darkness, but the light of my screen's illuminating. So okay, we've got thanks very much. Thanks for interesting webinar. That was really interesting, Davina says. But it seems no questions for now, so I'm not going to keep you all. I'd like to thank everybody very much for attending the webinar, for giving us an hour of your time. Remind you that you will be sent certificates next week, and the week after that, this recording will be available on teachertraininghub.pearsonelt.es if you'd like to watch any part of the webinar again. Okay, so thank you very much, Emma, and thank you to all the teachers that have attended.
Bye-bye.
Good night.